Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Great Goddess. Praise be to Goddess. Praise be to Goddess. Well, we're a day late this week releasing our video, and the reason should be quite clear. There was a shooting yesterday on the very day that I was supposed to make my video, and I was going to make it about the Paris attacks, but then this shooting happened in America. I decided to make it about the shooting in America instead. So, without any further ado, the Paris attacks and the San Bernardino attacks. Both of them are linked together. They're linked by radical Islam and by the dialogue of hate that takes place in foreign countries and in our own country that is so wide and so pervasive, this dialogue of hate that causes people to act out in this way and to commit atrocities in the name of Allah or whatever their God is, whatever their God's name may be. They commit atrocities in the name of their God. Well, what can we do about it? What can we, ordinary citizens, do about these horrific crimes? Obviously, there's no gun law that we could have made legally that would have stopped this individual from obtaining the guns. So what could we have done to stop it? Is there anything we could have done to stop it? Perhaps made this man less radical, made him more moderate? And if so, how? How can we make Muslims more moderate and keep them from becoming radicalized? How? Well, I don't have a good answer to that question. I'd leave that up to the experts on Islamic law and Islamic teachings. I'm no expert on Islam. But I do know this. I know that radical Islam is a clear and present danger to our country and to our world. And what can we do about it? What is there that we can do about it? Well, I know what I would do about it. But I don't know what you would do about it. But I know what I would do about it. And that is teach people about Goddess. Because if people know about Goddess, they're not going to turn to radical Islam anytime soon. I believe in Goddess. Not everyone believes in Goddess. Some people believe in Allah. But I believe in Goddess, and I believe that Goddess is the true savior of our planet, because only she can change these radicals and change their hearts away from radical jihadism that their religion may promote. Their religious beliefs may promote radical jihadism. I'm not sure. But I do know this. I do know that Goddess would never promote radical jihadism. She would be opposed to radical jihadism. In fact, she would be opposed to violence of any kind. She would be opposed to violence. So she is the great one that is opposed to the violence that we find in this world. And the violence is all up to the people who make the violence. It's not Goddess's fault that people are violent. It's the fault of people who are violent that they are violent, not Goddess. Goddess has nothing to do with the violence in this world. She's innocent, and we The violent ones are guilty. It's those of us who choose to be violent who are guilty, and no one else. So what can we do about this? What can we do to teach people about Goddess, and teach people not to become radical jihadis? What can we do to turn the tide or change people's minds and hearts toward Goddess and away from violence, such as we've seen in our country recently and also in Paris? Well, we can teach people that Goddess opposes violence, and we can teach people that the Goddess is real and that she would always oppose violence. That there's never an instance where she would condone violence or say violence is good. Now, that doesn't mean people don't have the right to defend themselves. People do have the right to have police to defend the public safety, and do have the right to self-defense. If the people at the that place had been carrying guns and had fought back against them, that would have been perfectly acceptable, because um, gun violence is bad, and any way you can fight it is good. But um, aside from that, Goddess opposes violence. Aside from self-defense, she opposes violence, and we need to convey to people this message that Goddess opposes violence. Because if we can convey this message to people loud and clear, that Goddess opposes violence and that she always has opposed violence, then the violence in this world would decrease. If people believed. If people believed in Goddess, the violence would decrease. And people don't know about Goddess. They don't know about her. They don't believe in her. They believe that any goddess is false, and it's the feminine principle that is the peaceful principle. So because Goddess is missing from all the world religions except for a few, like Hinduism, for example, because she's missing, that nonviolent principle is also missing. And the nonviolent principle is missing because we allow ourselves to sweep Goddess under a rug and not allow Goddess into our hearts and minds, and keep the divine feminine out of religion. That is how all of this started. It all started by deifying men and their masculine violence, and making that the gold standard of religion, and not Goddess, and not the divine feminine. We excluded the divine feminine, and we excluded all femininity and feminine energy. And that feminine energy is very peaceful. So we have the masculine being worshipped, and along with the masculine being worshipped, we have violence being glorified. Go figure. Because people deify themselves and put themselves at the center of religion, and put their masculine selves at the center of religion, and worship themselves and their own principle rather than Goddess's principle of nonviolence. That is how this violence erupts and how it keeps going. It keeps going because of the violent principle that's being worshipped. Because the masculine principle in this world is being worshipped in the place of Goddess, we have all of this violence. If the divine feminine were brought back into worship if we worshiped the divine feminine and worshiped her for real, really worshiped her and really honored her, then we would have a decrease in violence in this world. So that is the reason why there's so much violence. It's because Goddess is absent. Goddess with her reason and her mollifying power and her power to pacify violence and to keep violence down. That's why we have radical jihadis and radical Islam, because they're worshiping a male god. Allah is a male god. They refer to him as he. And the Christians also worship a he. They worship a male god. And they all worship a he, a male god that's described as Lord. And then because they're worshiping a he, because they're worshiping a male god, they're worshiping violence, because they are worshiping the male dominant principle, the principle of trying to dominate and trying to subject and trying to subdue and trying to get one leg up on the competition all the time. They're thinking about how to get one leg up on the competition, how to fight and fight and fight and fight. They're always thinking about this. They're always thinking about this, always, because they worship a male god. And a male god is a violent god. A violent god, a jealous god, an angry god, a god that looks like them, that sounds like them, who is them. They are worshiping themselves rather than the divine feminine principle in this universe that really created this universe. The divine feminine principle created this universe, and they're not worshiping her. So that's the cause of all this violence. And while we may not be able to convert radical jihadis to goddess worship anytime soon, we know now what the root cause is of the violence. And now we know how we can stop it. We can stop it by stopping the worship of male gods. And the way that they're worshipped in this world is with violence. They are honored with violence and worshipped with violence and worshipped in violence. So that's what we need to do. We need to instate goddess worship in this world, and the violence will go down if we teach people about goddess. I'm Sarah Jane Alpha Wolf, signing off. Until next time, have a great week, and try not to feel too bad about the horrible violence in San Bernardino. I know that it's a rough thing to deal with, but just try to cope with the heavy reality of violence, and try to buoy up your spirits, lift your spirits up, and don't fall into a deep depression over it. See you then.